So hello guys, welcome back to this new video. In this video I'm going to implement a few advices. I'm going to continue with the third episode of the series of the coding blog. As you might know, I'm currently building a URL shortener based on a microservice architecture, but this time I'm going to refactor my code, especially one functionality, and I'm going to refactor all my code in different parts because I understand, asking on a Reddit post, that my code has a little bit of issues with solid principles. So let's move on to the computer and let's get started. So hello guys, welcome back. Here we are on the computer, and in this video I'm going to fix on a single problem in our code because is the consumer service class in the shortener service, because we have this massive if-else statement that doesn't follow and doesn't complain with the solid principles, more specifically the open-close principle, and we have to fix this. And in order to fix this, I'm thinking to use the strategy pattern, so I'm going to implement this straight to the point. So I'm going to move into request and mapping, create mapping request, delete mapping request, update mapping request, and get mapping request, and get all mapping request. Finally, I'm going to create the super type. So this is mapping request.java. This is going to be an interface, and this is empty. And this interface is going to extend all of them. So create mapping request, implement mapping request, and I'm going to copy this piece of code. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to paste it right here. I'm going to paste this piece of code, and that's it. Now that we have implemented all of them, we can start creating our strategy. So the interesting thing that I'm going to do right now is to create a strategy pattern. A strategy pattern consists in a simple interface that's the strategy interface, and in this case is the mapping request handler. And the mapping request handler is going to handle a general type of request. And what I'm going to do right now is to create different types of classes that implements the request handler interface, and for each type of class I'm going to define the behavior for that specific type of request. So in order to create our strategy, we have to create the main interface that request mapping request handler, Java, and this interface is going to have two methods to implement. So public class of unknown class, get request class, and that's it. And then we have to implement public, and we have to return a list of mapping response handle request, and that's it. The request is going to be handled. We have to pass the mapping request, and we have to import also the list. And now we can start writing implementation. So for example, create mapping request handler. Okay, and with this implementation, Java, and this class implement mapping request handler, and we have to add an implemented method. So first of all, we have to annotate this as a component, and also we have to add an all-args constructor because we are going to inject dependencies into it. Then we have to return the class. So in this case, return create mapping request.class, and that's it. And in handle request we have to pass first of all the dependency, so private URL. Oh yeah, we are creating this in the refactor package, so we have to copy this, cut this, and paste them into the shortener. So URL mapping service, URL mapping service, and that's it. Now this mapping service we have to use it, and now we have to import another, so this is final because this is a dependency, and private final object mapper, and that's it. Now we can start implementing our methods. So first of all we have to convert our mapping request to the specified type request. So create mapping request converted request mapper dot convert value from request. So I'm going to shorten with req to create mapping request dot class, and with the converted request we have to pass it into the URL mapping service. So URL mapping equals, and I was converting already. We have to convert the converted request, and this is getting an error because we have to pass also the long, but let's fix it because we don't need to pass the long user ID because we can pass directly into the create mapping request. So I'm going to add directly this, and I'm going to add the long user ID, and by adding the user ID we can delete the long parameter and the user ID, and that's okay. Now we can go back under create mapping, and we can use the return mapping to return a list of new of object mapping, because we have to map the URL mapping to the mapping response. Convert value from mapping to mapping response class, and that's fine. Now we can copy this specific handler, and we can paste and edit to change the implementation. So update mapping request, this is delete mapping by code, and the code is converted request dot code, and that's fine. We can keep this served with these handlers. Then we can update adding the other two left. So we have to add the get all request handler and the get request handler, but for now that's fine. And we can go into consumer service. Oh yeah, I was forgetting. We have to implement the last component. That's the request handler factory. So mapping request handler factory Java. This is a class, simple class. I'm going to return public request mapping request handler get handler, and I'm going to pass into the method get handler the class of request class. Now within this we have to define this as a component. That's fine. And now we have to add also a constructor, because we are going to inject all the dependencies. Because in here you're going to say if the request class is equals to create mapping request dot class, we're going to return a new create mapping request handler, but here we have to pass the dependency. So private final URL mapping service, URL mapping service, and private final object mapper, and that's it. And now object mapper, and we pass URL mapping service and object mapper. Now we can copy this and paste it right here and add as if clause, and then we change this create mapping request to update, and then to create read and delete. And finally, whether we don't have a matching type, we can throw a custom exception. So I'm going to create this custom exception. Request type exception, string MSG. I'm going to call this super MSG, and that's it. Now we can throw this exception in case we don't find the matching request type. So throw new unsupported request type exception, and we say unsupported request type class request class.get name, and this is fine. Now that we have the last piece of our list of items, we can start deleting all this messy code and start writing something that's cleaner. So let's get rid of all of these. I don't need them, but I think we need mapper, so I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to delete this. So now I'm going to say that our request, first of all, I need to inject our factory, so private final mapping request handler factory, mapping request handler factory, request, so mapping request handler, we're gonna say mapping request handler factory dot get handler and message dot get payload type, and that's it. And within this, I'm going to say get payload type and return the matching request handler factory. Then we have to say list of mapping response payload equals to request handler dot handle, that's general request, and the request we have to say, first of all, we have to convert it from the message, so request, so mapping request payload, request payload equals to object mapper dot convert value from message dot get payload to message get payload type. And finally, I'm going to cast this to mapping request. Now I'm going to pass this, so request payload, and we are done. We can just try to run our code and see if it works. So let's just go under here and run the authentication service, and this is running nice. Also the gateway, the redirector, and the shortener. I'm having an issue, so I'm going to my main controller. I have to delete this ID. That's it. I can run the shortener also, and we are ready to try to do a few tests. So I'm going to say delivery tracking. No, this is the one. So the login system, I'm going to say login, for example, and I'm going to copy the token. and with token I'm going to paste it in this example request. So I'm going to send it, and I'm getting the response. Oh yeah, so let's say I'm going to throw an exception, so I'm going to send the error another time, and this already exists, so this is fine. This works pretty fine. Now I'm going to say I'm going to add the list, the other two handlers. So I'm going to stop all of them because I don't want to the services overload, and I'm going to say into services another service, so get mapping request handler Java, and this I'm going to copy I'm going to delete this, delete and delete, get mapping request, and that's fine. Now you can see get mapping, find mapping, find by code. So this is find by code, and that's it. And finally we can implement get all mappings, so get all mappings request handler dot Java. Yeah, I'm going to copy this, paste. So yeah, I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to say get all mapping request handler, get all mapping request. This is right import, and then get all mappings without any parameter, and that's it. So we don't need to convert the request, and we have to add the list of URL mapping, yeah, because we got a list, and then we have to convert, we have to say for URL mappings, I'm going to return list mapping response response array list. Okay, I'm going to create a new array list, and here I'm going to response.add object mapper dot convert value from the mapping to mapping response dot class. Finally, I'm going to return response. Okay, and see if we got an error. Where is the error? Yeah, we forgot a curly brackets. So now we're done. We can run and test if it works. Okay, so I'm going to do another time the request and another time. So I'm getting the error, mapping already exists, and I can say, for example, ready refactor at G method not allowed because I need to get on get, and I get mapping redirect, and I can say, for example, mapping, and this causes an issue because redirect requests cannot be cast to mapping requests unnamed loader restart class loader. Yeah, because we have a dead letter exchange, so just check the communication. So here in the consumer service we return, for example, the error to short under exchange, auth error, general error. So probably that could be a general error, I don't know, because mapping error also. So let's go under the gateway rabbit configuration. So we configured just for mapping, but not for auth or even errors. So auth routing key, error routing key, auth dot everything, and error dot everything with double R. Now I can create mapping. So reply shortener error binding, error routing key, and I'm going to copy this and paste it here. This is not error but auth binding, auth routing key. But I think we need to change the routing key here because it's not general error, but it's error internal, and that's fine. Now we can just try to check if it works. So I'm going to send I get server error, general error, unsupported request type. Because I didn't configure it into the mapping factory. So I'm going into the get mapping request handler factory, this, and I'm going to say this is else if request class equals to get all mapping request at class, get all mapping request handler, and else if get mapping request, get mapping request, and that's fine. Now we can just try and see if it works. So I'm going right here and sending. So let's debug our shortener controller right here. So I'm going to debug and I'm going to try to run the example query, and I get this request class. So what type of request class? Get all mappings, get all mapping. This is the S. This is stupid S. I'm going to read server issues. So get all mappings, request handler, and that's cleaner. Now we can run another time and see if it works. So we get a mapping response, and we get the payload empty because we didn't create anything, but we can create, for example, a simple mapping. So post shorter mapping, and we created a simple mapping, for example, for google.com. We can also add a mapping for YouTube, and we can post them. And finally we can just for example get them all, and getting the entire list as you can see here, and that's fine. So this has been a nice video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video where we're going to implement other features like this following the solid principle.